Welcome back to the We the Patriots podcast. I am your host, Sal Asante, and today is the last episode of 2024. With that, we're going to do our top 5 episodes of the year, just like last year. We're going to break them down, hopefully a little better this year. Well, I know the numbers were a lot better, but we'll talk about all that. We'll talk about each episode a little bit, give you guys a little bit of a clip, and thank you guys for watching 2024 again. Sal Asante. Let's get right into it. With the top 5 this year, I did a little bit different of a criteria. Last year, I did strictly downloads. This year, you had a few episodes that had maybe some more downloads than the ones that I'm going to go over today, or that are in our top 5. But a lot of the ones today had a lot of engagement, and that's what I love to see from all of you guys. So let's get into clip number 1. Without a doubt, deserves to be in the top 5. I think was probably one of our best done episodes so far. Definitely our best interview with John Marshall. And that was episode number 81. Title, I believe, was The Evolution of Presidential Elections, again with John Marshall. This episode broke down, gave me a really good overview, but I think that it gave a great background to elections in general, how we may think that things have changed at this point in time, but it's always been crazy. There's always been things changing in the way that elections are done, and we are just here along for the ride and experiencing it in our own time. So without any more holding it back, I'll let the clip kind of speak for itself, but listen to this clip, get a little bit of the history, get a little bit of the background of how similar things might be hundreds of years ago back in American history. Here we go.
The perfect example of that was James Buchanan, who's often considered one of our weakest presidents. In 1856, he was a Democrat from Pennsylvania. The Democrats had a major problem because they were a very much divided party. In fact, in 1860, they split into factions. But your Southern Democrats were pro-slavery. All the Southern slaveholding class were all Southern Democrats. In the North, you had the sort of more Northern urban industrial Democrats. Right. And there was very much a schism between the two. So you had to find a candidate who would somewhat appeal to both of those factions. They really didn't like to touch the slavery issue because it was not a winning issue in the North, and it was almost a non-negotiable in the South. And the handful of issues that had really defined that 1856 election came back to the Compromise of 1850. A lot of the settlements that Kansas-Nebraska Act, everything that went on in that 1850s decade. James Buchanan had been out of the country. He was serving as an ambassador in Europe. So he wasn't on the record as voting for or against any of these things. He was kind of a very milquetoast figure who didn't really have any strong allegiances to either northern or southern sides. He was from Pennsylvania, which wasn't a true northern industrial state. It wasn't a true western state. It wasn't a true southern state. It was kind of in the middle. And so he became this guy who wasn't, because he was put forward because he wasn't a great candidate, but he didn't offend any of their needed voting blocks. And so Buchanan became the Democratic nominee.
Might be our president right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So clip number 2 here. This is our number 4 episode, top 5 episodes of the year for We the Patriots podcast. It was actually a episode with me and Andrew. Believe it or not, this episode was really stupid, I thought, but I guess you guys loved it. So we talked about Peanut and, God, now I'm going to forget the name. Well, somebody will remind me of the name of the raccoon. Peanut and the raccoon that got killed in New York City because somebody owned them as pets. Kind of let the clip speak for itself. We don't actually talk about it in that clip specifically, but another cool instance. And yeah, it was fun. It was fun talking with you guys, hearing you guys' opinions. Peanut the squirrel, everybody. Apparently you love it. Before we move on to the lady.
Well, there's another case I could think of too, where I'm assuming it's another wildlife officer who was in Florida, actually euthanized the wrong snake from,
I remember this was a breeder. This was terrible.
A snake breeder.
Yeah.
It was worth like $100,000 or something. It's $100,000 snake. And the cops go in there and they euthanize the wrong one, right? And the cops going already, oh, don't worry about it. The state's going to take care of it. Yeah, meaning like the state, everybody is going to have to, with our money,
Pay for this guy's fuck
pay
up.
this guy to reimburse it, right? To reimburse this snake owner, the snake breeder. But that still doesn't replace the snake that he had, right? I mean, I don't know too much about snakes, but I'm sure they're all a little bit different. They have their own personalities. They're incredibly rare. Maybe it's not replaceable, and you would just be getting the $100,000 that it was allegedly worth. What lesson does that teach the cop who fucked this up? There's no accountability. And these are just three examples
100%. Yep.
off the top of our head that we're thinking of. How much more does this actually happen that doesn't make the news, that we don't talk about? And I feel like as a culture in America, we kind of have always given the government a pass on these things. Like they have our best interest at heart, right? They didn't mean to do it. But when you think about it, there really is no accountability for these things, especially these mess ups. And I don't really know if that aligns with what our forefathers thought our country would be.
I don't think that it aligns with our core values for sure. I'll tell you where the blame does lie, though, because it doesn't lie with the officers that walked in. They did their job. They reported the incident, and I'm sure that everything that was done was not done because they said it had to be. Now, breaking into the top 3 with our next clip in our top 3 episode, number 3 surprised me because it was a tie almost between this one and the next one up. And this episode was number 75, Debates and Arrests. This one was awesome to do. I'm glad that it got some good attention out there. We were just talking about the before of what was the presidential debates. This is before even Kamala got put in. This is when it was prospective Biden versus prospective Trump, and how are they going to battle out? And we didn't know the aftermath, neither did I in this episode. Go take a listen on this part where I was going over this ridiculous claim of somebody trying to arrest Netanyahu. Here we go. Today, I just found out that, and I'm not sure if any of you guys heard about this, seems kind of minor, in my opinion, the International Court, ICC, putting out a couple of warrants, I guess you would call them. They seek arrests. I don't know what that even means. This court has no jurisdiction, to my knowledge, in reality, anywhere. So what I saw, and I found this hilarious, is they're now finding, and I hope I can get a screenshot for you guys because this is pretty funny. They want to hold and put people up for war crimes trials, and that's going to include Benjamin Netanyahu, one of his defense ministers, Yoav Gallant. I'm sure I am absolutely butchering that, as well as a couple of the leaders from Hamas. I believe we have, who is it? Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed Diaf, Ismail Haniyeh. So 3 people from Hamas, two people, but one of them being the actual elected leader of a nation. I don't know how democratic it was, but elected leader of the nation. I really find it curious to see how they plan on prosecuting this if they do. What are they going to try to use to justify it? And yeah, as horrific as what I think is going on in Gaza, to hold accountable, instead of a nation, you're going to hold accountable one man. You're going to put an arrest warrant on his head, which is basically what it is. I don't believe that the United States is a part of this group, but there are Western nations, including England. Sure, a decent amount of the EU. I'm not sure. I'll have to confirm that the EU is actually back in the ICC, but if they are, you have quite a few Western nations that are going to, I guess if they really do abide by the ICC, they'll be attempting to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. Put into a circumstance of Benjamin Netanyahu steps foot in England, steps foot in Germany, trying to make a deal, possibly talk peace. Is he subject to arrest at that point? The implications of this are, to me, unknown. Be very interesting to see how that continues. Now, it was really nice to have a solo episode make it into the top 5, and especially be battling for number 2 or number 1. But to me, number 2 was without a doubt. I think it probably should be the number 1 if we're talking about a podcast and, me not being solo, having an interview. This is probably the best episode of the year, without a doubt. One of the coolest stories. I ended up listening. So for a little background, if you don't know anything about me or what I do, I am a full-time landscaper, work with family company, but we can get into that in the DMs if you want to hit me up. But I do snow removal. And when I do snow removal, anybody who works in the business knows you could be spending hours and hours and hours on end. Sometimes you're out over a day worth of time in a row. When that happens, you need stuff to listen to. And for me, I found Damon Bohr's podcast, The History of Russia. Very simply put, I wanted to know more about Russia, and this was the man to go to. His podcast is fantastic. I could not recommend it anymore. You're going to get links to everything in the description, but if you're going to check anything out, do check out Damon's podcast down in the description. It is, to me, one of the best listens. But anyway, to stop getting aside, I reached out. I just had to let David know how much of a fan that I was and how much I would love to just talk to him. I don't know if he's ever done an interview, and he hadn't. We had him on the show. It was enlightening. It was fun. I got a couple of clips here. One, of course, we got to talk about Russia. And number two is actually a fascinating story of him living in the Middle East and different culture. So I want you guys to get a feel for Damon and go check that episode out. It'll be in the link description below, of course. That is just make sure here, number 67, episode 67, Rasputin to Putin, Damon Bohr.
Anyway, Yeltsin decides to retire, and he hands over the baton to Putin. And first few years, he seems to be reaching out. He seems to be taking control of things in Russia, getting rid of the what's the word for them? The rich guys who ran everything at the time. There's a specific word for them, but I can't remember what it was.
Anyway, are you looking about oligarchs?
Oligarchs, that's the word, yeah.
No.
So Russia's in the hands of these oligarchs, and Putin doesn't like it. And he decides to take them on, and gradually, using various methods, he wins out. But at that time, he's actually part of the family of world leaders. He's trying to build relationships with people, particularly in Europe, but also in the US. And then all of a sudden, I don't know whether it's absolute power corrupts absolutely, but gradually there's no opposition to him in Russia. We decided that she was going to stay on in the UK to finish her school. And when my wife and son came out, he was about 12, and my wife bought him an ice cream. And then she phoned me up in absolute panic, and she said, "Oh my God," she said, "Rob's just eaten an ice cream outside, and it's Ramadan." And I said, right. I said, first of all, don't worry, it doesn't apply to kids, okay? And even if you'd been doing it, it's highly unlikely anything would happen to you. But to live with another culture, and I went out there twice. I lived for 18 months in Dubai as well, which was less enjoyable. Dubai is more of a touristy kind of place.
Right.
A bit like Vegas on the Gulf,
Yeah.
And
Vegas.
when I worked in Bahrain, I was working with about 90% local Bahrainis. So I got an idea. And in fact, most of them...
Again, there's a contention that really should have been number one, but I think you guys will see why the number one episode was the number one. I did mention that a solo podcast got into top 5. I was excited about number 3. This one was number 1. And another solo podcast. The failed assassination of Trump, number 79, comes in at number 1. To say that I expected it to be the highest performing in terms of downloads show by far of the year, should I have been surprised, or was I surprised? Yes. Should I have been, or really, is it shocking at all? Not really. Let's be honest. It was the most clickbaity episode of the year without a doubt. And you guys showed with the amount that you guys want to listen to it and hated on it. Apparently you guys didn't like my opinion. Maybe it was this clip that's coming up. I don't really know. To me, I thought I was just saying the truth. You let me know in the comment below. And yeah, go listen to the episode. This is number 1.
He's not just running for his own personal gain, because I am still slightly afraid of that, to be completely honest with you. I think it's very possible that the man is hiding what his true intentions are. And I think that always has to be considered, but it's always got to be considered for every politician, right? The one thing that I'll always come back to is Trump at least tried to come through on as many of his campaign promises as you could. I've never seen a president actually hold true to those. Right? Think about Biden. It's pot legal, not to my knowledge. Did he end up paying off student debt? No, not really. Gave some grants out, but so when you think about it, the total impact of these presidents, Trump has the chance to rework his legacy, right? Really become a loved president, loved by a lot of the country right now, supported by it. And I am glad to see that the overall rhetoric seemed to be hoping him well, because how do you hope anybody who just got shot? Ill will. There were quite a few people who did it. Quite a few people who did this. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. I'm just saying it should be directed at him getting better. I would hope that's how you feel. Moving on, what happens from here? I think that Trump owns it. I think that Trump can feel the sense and the tide shifting in his favor. I don't know why he would want to lose this race. He pretty much has his own livelihood at stake. He could, I believe, pardon himself, or at least get someone to pardon him. I think he's running away with it. I want to do a deeper show and hopefully get Andrew back on here to talk debates, talk a little bit deeper into that. But the debates really showed the difference in the stamina left in these two men. Now, they're both aged. In my opinion, they both should not be the forerunners of each party, but they are. And can really change that now. Democrats are trying. They can't really change that now. So we're looking at Raw. And when we looked at that debate stage, there was at least 7 to 10, and I listened to every moment of this. 7 to 10 instances where Joe Biden just lost his train of thought. He may have lost his breath. He may have lost his gaze in the crowd that wasn't there. Whatever it was at least 7 to 10 times, and it was sad. See him stumbling and just stopping. See him not be able to formulate his thought completely and just leave it hanging. It's sad. However, it's necessary. And this is a point that I think needs to be made, is that although Biden is so apparently incompetent, it's very possible that he doesn't think that's at all the case. It's very possible that he actually thinks that he's a champ right now, that he has a chance to run away with this shit. If that's the case, it's very possible that his handlers needed this situation, the debate debacle.
So got all that out of the system. We do have some, I would say, some honorable mentions, just some shows that I wanted to bring up and shout out. Yeah, we had a lot of good shows this year. I think the quality of the show, you guys can let me know in the description if I'm totally wrong, but the quality of the show, I mean, dedicated a lot of time and some money into making sure that we were putting out the right kind of content and doing it the right way. I think it showed this year. We had some higher quality shows. The overall downloads were higher. And let's just talk about some shows that didn't quite make the cut. So there was a couple that got left out. Let's pull up the good old YouTube channel here. So one that just missed the cut is going to be another solo show that I did. I wasn't, to be honest, I took this out of the cut because I wasn't impressed by it myself. And there was no likes, there was no comments on it, but this was Trump's 2024 landslide. I believe that this was going to be episode 89. I didn't think that it was crazy. I didn't think it belonged in it. Just, again, no likes, no comments on it, tons of views, but didn't need that with the other shows that were going in there. Another good show, I think that got taken out, and I actually think was a really good show, but it just didn't get watched or engaged with a ton, was World Wars and Moral Dilemmas. Now, this show was a lot of fun to me, talking about war, talking about the money that goes inside of politics and inside of decisions when it comes to making decisions on behalf of people, sending resources and trying to claim resources and land for your country. Fascinating to me, at least. And inside that, we have our second Israel-Palestine show, which also got us our most recent interview. So if you have not seen our most recent interview, go check that out. I think that should have been on this list. Maybe it was out a little bit too recently. I don't know. You guys go check it out. That is with, oh my God, forgive me. That is with Jamie Miller, former director, Republican Party in Florida. Fascinating conversation. I thought it was one of the better interviews that I've done. Go check that out. I'll put a link in that. Even though probably just based on how much it got interacted with, doesn't deserve to be on the top 5 or the mentions. I think it's still got to throw it out there. Most recent show, so go check that one out. But the way that he found us was my most recent Israel-Palestine show. And that was episode 87, 1 year later in the Middle East. I think that show deserves mentioning because it also calls back to another show that I did earlier. Now, granted, a lot of the show has to do with the Martyr Mate podcast and how much he has taught me or how much I have taken to his book recommendations on the subject. It's been great learning about the conflict. And if you are like me, you get interested in the more controversial topics in the world. And of course, Israel-Palestine, Israel conflict in general could not be one that is more controversial. So go take a look at that if you needed some more listening, if you love We the Patriots podcast, if you can't get enough of me. Now, let's just round this episode out and round the year out with, well, I want to give my thoughts on the year. want to save this for now. So if you are still listening, you are probably a homie, or you love us, or maybe you love listening to me. For any reason, I could not thank you anymore. We the Patriots has been a blast starting. From Andrew and I, we can't thank you enough for listening. Make sure that you're subscribing and sharing with your friends. Get us some more people like you, more people that want to hear different perspectives or want to hear all perspectives instead of just biased information. That is our goal. Our goal is to give you the best of everything, of both worlds, not trying to confine you to any narrative, not trying to make you think the way that we do, because all we are is investigating, trying to find our path in the world. And we feel like if you ever stop searching for that path, sure as shit, you're going to find yourself in a hole or a rut that is just not very easy to get out of. That's not our way of life. That's what we want to lay out to you guys. And so let's talk about 2024 as a whole. As the show, I loved it. If you're talking about what's happening in the world, I'm honestly pretty upset. Upset for a few reasons. Number one, we have not been able to find solutions to the conflicts going on around the world, specifically talking about what's going on in the Middle East and in Europe. On a broader scale, we're talking about also massive unrest in Syria now, talking about a continuation of the war that doesn't look like it's going to end for a while. Power vacuum, excuse me. You also have problems going on in Africa all over the place. This stuff doesn't get talked about. And again, I don't research this enough. This is something that I've said before, and something that I want to make a goal for 2025 is pay a little bit more attention to the conflicts that aren't getting the headline. Just like in Israel, Palestine has all this money invested into it, and keeping our attention, making sure that we keep it. And same thing goes for the Ukraine. Getting aside from that, and what 2024 also was especially domestically, it felt like things really got to the boiling point. You even saw an assassination attempt. There's going to be, I don't think for a long time, any proof of motive. So you're never going to see if that person was paid, if that person was a solo actor. You just don't know. And allegedly another attempt happened subsequently after, as I talked about in the show there. That made me sad. That made me realize that we're living in a time where I think we can talk about it as Americans or just people of the world. We need to calm down a little bit, especially with the political rhetoric. And we need to understand that both sides of most arguments are really coming from a place of trying to solve a problem. Now, is it the solution they agree on? No. But understanding that first, and understanding that someone is coming at something with as much passion and heart as you might be and just might have a different perspective, I think that's really important that we get back to, because we've kind of, I would think, based on some of the events that occurred this year or continue to occur, I would think that we haven't really been paying too much attention to that and loving thy neighbor and all that good stuff. For myself and personally, just personally, I'm not going to dig too deep in it, but one of the just worst years in terms of personal relationships and dealing with people. And I am so glad to move on to another chapter of my life. And I can't wait to make it that. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think maybe the world needs a little bit of a restart going into 2025. I know how cliche that can sound, but let's be honest here. We talk about it as Americans. We've got a new regime coming in. Things have been not great, really, over the past, say, 5 years now. If you're talking about 2025, going back to COVID and even a little bit before, things are not great. If you want to include the Trump presidency and you didn't enjoy it, a lot of people would include the Obama presidency as well. And then the Bush. Things haven't been great. Let's be honest. And yeah, if as a group, if we could start to focus on putting our best foot forward into changing this thing, even if it's not the person that we want to be leading us, whether that be your boss at work, whether that be your local city council, or whether that be the presidency or people representing you in Congress and the Senate. If you don't jive with them, if they're not your type of people, that's okay. Do what you can in your small bubble and do what you can to make the world a better place, especially as you see it in your eyes, and do it for reasons that aren't so selfish. Do it for, the greater good. Do things to insinuate this American dream that we are trying to keep alive, because I think it's still possible, but becoming further and further away from achievable from the average person. Yeah, as a group and as a people, we have an opportunity to get back to a moral fiber that lifts up our neighbors and lifts up people, our peers that are around us. And that's my view on 2024. Glad it's over. Let me know in the comments if you feel like 2024 was a negative year in general, because although I may feel a little bit that way now, To me, life is always like a set of roller coasters. And if you're unwilling to go through years like this, that might have been a down year, then you can't expect years to be up that are going to go up on the other sides. If I don't have any better words to go into 2025, leave it at that. Let's make it a better one next year, and Happy New Year to you all. Hope you had a good holiday.
I wish I were the fucking
Peace out.
state. I wanna be something, not nothing. Trapped inside my dream and I'm running away from these demons. But the feeling's so good, I'ma keep dreaming.